I'm trying to figure out why the bank also asks for the 1.2%. Now, and that's supposed to be part of
the bank figure. Okay, first of all, who does the bank care about?
You're the guarantor.
No, the bank cares about the bank.
Right, right.
So if all the money you make off of your project only goes to pay the bank back, the bank generally doesn't care. You understand that?
Okay.
You go out, you buy $1 million property, it throws off $10,000 a month positive cash flow. The bank's loan is $9,000. When it's all said and done, you've made $500. The bank generally just doesn't care because they got theirs, right?
Yeah, but they also want to know.
No, don't get ahead of me. That was not a question, that was a statement. The bank doesn't care. You with me? Mm-hmm. You with me? Except if your cash flow slips, right, then you may not be able to make that payment on the following, in which case now they do care. So to the bank, what they're looking at is, are you generating enough income every month from your net operating income, right? Income minus vacancy minus expenses equals NOI. That's the definition of NOI. Net operating income is the net income coming off the property. What the bank cares about is, are you generating enough plus a little bit more to make sure who gets paid?
The bank.
Exactly. And they could care less about anybody else. So every bank has a different definition of what that cushion is. One banker might say, we want a debt coverage ratio of 1.15. In other words, we want 15% above what you need to pay us. Another bank might say, well, we want a debt coverage ratio of 1.25. If I ask for a debt coverage ratio that's too high, guess what's going to happen?
They're not going to give you the loan.
Sherman's talking to 3 bankers. He's going to go to the one that says 1.2, right? They won't get the loan. So generally speaking, most banks are going to be in that sort of 1.15 to 1.2.
Okay.
Okay, the more comfortable they are with you, the more comfortable they are with the asset, then they may come down. So notice in the term sheet, they said that they would be comfortable, they want a 1.2, but they'd be comfortable with a 1. Why? Because that first bank, Bay Bank, is where I currently have the loan. They're willing to give me 80% and a debt coverage ratio of 1. Why? Because for the past 7 years, I've never missed a loan payment.
Right.
They're feeling really, really good about me. Mm-hmm. So in our next discussion, we'll start off talking about how banks look at you, the borrower, and we'll talk about what's called the 5 C's of credit. That's where we'll start next time, right? In the 5 C's of credit, the first question they want to ask is, you, who are you? What are you all about? Well, in this particular case, they already know me. Mm-hmm. So because they know me and because they've had 5 years experience with the asset, they're like, okay, we'll be a little more generous with this guy than we might be with somebody who's new off the street. Okay? But the bank, for the most part, again, doesn't care about you. And we all need to get that in our head. The bank cares about the bank. So if the bank says I need a 1.2 debt coverage, what they're saying is I need to protect my interest by making sure you're generating at least 20% more than you need to pay your monthly mortgage. If you generate more than that, good for you. If you generate less than that, I might get a little bit nervous because then all of a sudden you're dipping in my pocket and I don't want you dipping in my pocket. Right. Bank comes first. One thing's very, very clear with your bank covenants, even with your term sheet, and especially when you sign your loan documents, the bank comes first. Yeah. And we should always respect the fact that the bank comes first. Never miss a loan payment. Yes, ma'am.
So the NOI, I mean the 1.2 is not included in the 35% operating costs.
I think you're asking the question the wrong way, so let me help a little bit.
Okay.
The bank is looking at your NOI.
Right.
And the bank is saying, we're going to make you a loan to allow you to buy the property.
Right.
You're going to repay the loan out of the proceeds from your NOI.
Not from your operating costs.
Sorry?
Okay.
Here's where you're getting confused. Here's where you're getting confused. And it's very easy to get confused. Don't worry about it, okay? You're trying to put the mortgage payment in your expenses.
Right.
The mortgage payment is not in your expenses.
That's okay.
In NOI, great question. NOI assumes there's no mortgage payment. You're paying cash for the property. Now, the reality is most of us are going to go out and borrow money from somebody. We're either going to assume a loan that's in place and get seller financing, or we're going to go out and get a new loan. The bank is looking at the operating income from the property. Now, let me ask you a question. Does the bank want to operate the apartment building?
No.
So the bank wants to make sure you got a property manager in there too, right?
Right.
Now, does the bank have any problem whatsoever snatching your equity and kicking you out and taking all the cash for themselves? No. So all the bank really cares about is what's the operating income when all the expenses are paid, and is there enough money to service the debt?
Okay.
So the 1.2 says, I'm looking at your NOI, and if I see that your NOI is at least 120% of or better than what you need to pay me every month, then I'm okay making your loan.
Now I get it.
Okay?
Thank you.
No problem. Cool. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I understand in the construction loans, they amortize for 25 years?
Okay, so you said one thing that I didn't say, so we got to correct that.
Okay.
I'm not talking about construction loans.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay? I'm
Commercial,
talking about,
this commercial loans.
I'm talking about a commercial loan
Okay.
where the property is already operating and you're asking the bank to give you the money you need to buy the property, and they're willing to give you 70 to 80% of the purchase price.
Okay, so my biggest question is the 5-year part.
The 5-year
At
part.
the end of the 5 years, you say they renegotiate the rate?
So what happens is most commercial lenders today are going to put a 25-year amortization, meaning you're paying more than just what the interest payments, but they're typically not going to make those loans for longer than 5 years. Every 5 years, they want to reevaluate the situation.
Okay, what criteria do they use to reevaluate
It's almost like you're coming in from off the street.
Wow.
If you've never missed a loan payment, then they're looking at the 5-year history. So as an example, Bay Bank, which is the bank that has the loan now, they don't make these kinds of loans anymore. The bank got sold, brought in new management. They don't even make these kinds of true community-based loans anymore. However, because we've had this loan for 5 years and have never missed a loan payment and have never been late, they want to keep us. It's a no-brainer. I got somebody who's been paying for 5 years, actually more than, because originally Carrollton Bank made a construction loan, which it was a 2-year construction loan that got converted into this 5-year loan. So they actually have a 7-year history with us. Never missed a payment, never late. They're sitting there going, we can sleep at night because we know what this guy's all about. And again, when we pick up this conversation next time and talk about the 5 C's of credit, we'll talk about how important, and it's not just about the borrower, and it's not just about the collateral, it's not just about the asset. There's 3 other things they look at in determining should they make a loan with you. Well, if they're comfortable with you, the borrower, and they're comfortable with the collateral, because they've gone out and seen the property and go, okay, the property looks good, then there's only 3 other things they have to be worried about. The less they have to worry about, the more generous they will be with you within the context of being a banker, because bankers are never truly generous, not in the way we think of generous, right? But in their own little world, they can only be so generous with you. The more comfort they have about you and the more comfort they have about the deal, the more generous they will be with you. So as an example, I got 3 different banks looking at the same deal. Bay Bank has said, we'll give you 80% loan to value. Everybody else has said 70% loan to value. Bay Bank is saying debt coverage of 1 to 1. They said 1.2, but they also say, but you got to at least maintain a 1. Why? Because we've never missed a loan payment. They know who we are. They've had 5 years to get to know who we are. They're way more generous and way more comfortable than some of these other lenders who are sitting there going, well, we've never done anything in Baltimore. So I got another bank that's actually done business with me for like 10 years, but they've never been to Baltimore. So they're not quite as generous about the asset. And then I got another bank that's actually done business in Baltimore and likes the asset, but we've never done business together. And they're like, well, we can't quite be as generous as Bay Bank because we don't know you quite as well. We don't have that 5-year history. So each one of them is going to give me a term sheet. In fact, each one is giving me a term sheet, and now I'm sitting here deciding, can I negotiate this with the other? Can I get this better term with this other? Do I stay where I am, or do I go someplace else? That all gets factored in when I look at these 3 term sheets.
Now, I'm assuming that means all new closing costs and, again, like just
Well, not necessarily. So because the loan is an existing loan With Bay Bank, they did make me go order a new appraisal. That was $5,000. But they're basically going to modify an existing loan on their books, which means I will not have to go out and pay a whole nother loan. And that's something I got to factor in. Because on a $700,000 loan, I'm probably looking at like $10,000 in closing costs. That's just money that goes to, if I wind up taking the loan to a new lender. If there's a change in the borrower, right, then all of a sudden I'm having to pay a chunk of money, which I may or may not want to pay.
Okay.
Okay? But good question.